Hey friends, in today's video, we're going to see the difference between an Agile team, an Agile Release Train, and a solution train, all in one really quick and easy picture for you. I'm Ahmed, a scaled Agile coach and trainer based in the UK, so let's get started. So let's start with the Agile team. What is an Agile team? Well, an Agile team is hopefully a cross-functional collection of individuals working together to achieve a common goal. How many people are in there? Well, in Scale Agile, we say that there should be between 5 and 11 people in our Agile team. How does that differ to an Agile Release Train? Well, an Agile Release Train is a collection of these Agile teams. It has 50 to 125 people inside that, and between 5 and 12 Agile teams. So what's a solution train then, you may ask? Well, a solution train is, you guessed it, a group of Agile Release Trains. When we bunch them up together, all of these Agile Release Trains, they are there to actually support the delivery of a specific solution. Hence, we bring them together in a solution train. So, example could be 175 plus individuals. So if you've got 50 to 125 people in each Agile Release Train, if you've got one full-on train and one smaller train, then probably about 175 plus people in your solution train. Plus, it could be quite a lot larger than that if you've got multiple Agile teams. If you've got multiple Agile Release Trains in there, you could have any number of Agile Release Trains in there. But basically, we're looking at roughly about 175 plus individuals on your solution train, with at least 2 plus Agile Release Trains going to make up your solution train. Okay, well, how long is an iteration inside an Agile team? Which is 2 weeks. In Scrum, it's typically between 1 to 4 weeks. But in Scaled Agile, we say we default to 2 weeks. What about an Agile Release Train? What is a program increment, which is the program level time box, if you like, and that's between 8 to 12 weeks. It depends upon your specific context, your organization. The default is said to be 10. What I find over here, basically, mostly in the UK, we use a 12-week cadence because that typically aligns with financial quarters, okay? And that corresponds to 4 to 6 iterations. Now remember, you might have your innovation and planning sprint, which is your last sprint, which we keep available, and we don't plan actual work inside there because we are doing things like keeping a buffer in there. We are making sure that we can do some learning and innovation and preparing for our next PI planning event, as well as running other events like our Inspect and Adapt inside the second week of the innovation and planning iteration. And finally, when we're looking at our solution train, it's exactly the same. That also is working to an 8 to 12 week cadence. So your Agile Release Trains should all be using the same cadence, and therefore when they come together, the solution train will also be using your same cadence as well. Okay, so let's move on. What are the roles? Well, in an Agile team, you have a Scrum Master. That is the person that is actually responsible for coaching and facilitating and guiding the team. You can think of them as the person that facilitates the how. You have the product owner. You can think of that person as the person that is actually providing the vision and the guidance and the priority. You can think of that person simply as the what person. And then you've got the rest of the team that's actually helping us to deliver on the how. Okay, how does that compare to an Agile Release Train? Well, you've got somebody called a Release Train Engineer. That Release Train Engineer is, you could think of them as a chief Scrum Master. So many of these Scrum Masters are supported, guided, and facilitated by the release train engineer. They're responsible for delivery on the overall Agile release train. You have the product manager, that is the what guy or gal. They're actually giving the outline, giving the vision of where the Agile release train needs to go, what it needs to achieve. So that's your product manager. Then you've got the system architect. That is the individual that's going to be looking at answering questions such as what kind of technologies are we using? What are there any third-party integrations that need to take place? What's the overall strategy, the technical strategy that we're using? What protocols are we using? Are we using cloud? Are we using premise? Any proprietary technologies that need to be integrated? And questions such as that is where we get the guidance from the system architect. Then you have the business owners who are responsible for the ROI, making sure that the value that we were hoping to derive from this initiative is actually derived. Let's have a look and now see what the roles are for the solution train. For our solution train, yep, we have a solution train engineer. So you have multiple Agile Release Train engineers. They're coordinated and aligned and supported by the solution train engineer. You have the product managers. Again, they're given their vision and guidance from the solution manager. Then you have your solution architect, again, bringing all of the architectural strategy across all of the different Agile release trains to make sure that there's a coherent strategy across all of the different Agile release trains as well. Business owners, they participate in some of the key events at the solution train. They'll be participating in the pre and post PI planning events. For example, they'll also be participating in solution demos to make sure that we're getting the kind of value that we're hoping from our overall solution as well. Okay, now, what kind of methodologies will you typically find at each of these different constructs? At the team level, we could be using Scrum. So what is Scrum? Scrum is a lightweight agile framework that helps us to deliver, and we do planning at the beginning of that. We lock in what we're going to be delivering, and we deliver on that commitment over the next 2 weeks, right? The challenge we have with that is that we need to have some modicum of stability when we're using Scrum. For example, if we're in an environment where something's constantly changing, we could be in a support team, for example, it becomes very difficult to plan for a 2-week period because we don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen over the next hour or even the next minute. So we don't know, so we're not able to plan in advance. And that's where we use Kanban. This is a just-in-time process. It focuses on flow. We want to get the support tickets in that example out through the door as quickly as we possibly can. And so we really focus on that. Both of these approaches, especially if we're using a software, in a software context, use something called extreme programming. This talks about a lot of technical practices that are, really the foundations of many software teams, and they can help to support and assist with making sure that we've got really good quality going in. It gives advice on, ideas and concepts such as test first delivery and pair programming and shared ownership of code so that we can improve the way in which we actually deliver technical solutions. At the Agile Release Train, really we're using Scaled Agile, and so it's the same at the Solution Train level as well. Now, what requirements are we using? Let's have a look at that because that's quite interesting. So we're using user stories. So these are user-oriented, customer-centric requirements that typically small, can be achieved and done within 2 weeks, achieving ideally some real value. So those are user stories. We also have enabler stories. These could be technical or architectural or exploratory stories that actually help us to build either the architectural runway, the foundation upon which we build the user functionality, or support exploration and investigations as well. And some teams like to use tasks as well. This can help with the putting together the delivery tasks that they need to use. Safe kind of discourages it a little bit, but I find it's quite useful, especially for newer teams, to be using that. Okay, so now let's go on to the Agile Release Train. What do we have over here? We've got something that's frequently forgotten about. You've got program epics. So you've got epics at multiple levels within Scaled Agile. So you can have program epics that span longer than a program increment. Remember, we talked about the program increment being between 8 to 12 weeks. So you've got to make sure that your feature fits in within 8 to 12 weeks. If it doesn't, then you can put together a program epic, which then needs to be split out. And because we need delivery within that quarter. So that is where we use the features. Coming onto the solution train, you've got capabilities. Now, these capabilities bind together the features across the different Agile release trains to create a single capability at the solution train level so that you can actually span multiple Agile release trains. But remember, it's still within the 8 to 12 week iteration length, so you need to make sure it still fits within that. And the idea is to try to force together real value delivery, which can get harder as the teams and the solution gets bigger. Okay, finally, let's have a look at some of the events that are there in each of the different team structures, okay, if you like. So we've got iteration planning. So this is your iteration planning or your sprint planning, your 2-week planning that takes place at the beginning of each iteration, and typically 2 to 4 hours, where you're planning what is the team going to be focusing on for the upcoming 2 weeks. Okay. Then we've got, after that, you've got the daily stand-ups. This is the 15 minutes where the teams comes together and they plan for their day. They also talk about what they achieved yesterday and also if they've got any blockers and they need any help. After that, we look at the backlog refinement, because typically happening in the second week, and you're focusing on the future iteration to make sure that you've got your user stories and enabler stories all ready in time for your next sprint as well. Then you have your iteration demo, where you're actually demonstrating the work that you've done, as well as your iteration retrospective, which is where we look back at the last 2 weeks. We retrospect, we have a look at and ask ourselves, how did we do? What changes would we like to really make in the way in which we're working? How can we make our performance better? How can we grow as individuals? How can we grow as a team? These kind of questions coming up in your iteration retrospective. Okay. Now compare that to our Agile Release Train. We've got, similar to, you've got iteration planning, you've got PI planning. This is where all the teams come together in one big room, amazing event, every quarter or 8 weeks, depending upon what your iteration length is at the beginning of that, and planning out at a high level the overall roadmap for your upcoming program increment. Okay. The special thing about this is that everybody gets to meet each other. It's ideally face-to-face, but nowadays you've got this happening remotely as well. If you want to know more about PI planning, I've got an 18 video series. It's very in-depth, step-by-step, walking you through exactly how to do that. You can click on the link over here and look in the description below as well. Okay. So that's PI planning. Scrum of Scrums. We have all of the Scrum Masters coming together and discussing about how they can make sure that whether they're on track for the plan that they came up with in the PI planning, and discussing any dependencies and impediments over there. And then we have also a similar PO sync, which is for product owners coming together to discuss any changes in terms of the scope, in terms of the order priority that may have come about as a result of the executional challenges during that. We then have the system demos, where we have the teams coming together and demonstrating a more end-to-end view than the iteration demo or iteration review, and showing what can actually be delivered across the Agile Release Train. Okay. And then, of course, we have to make sure we're ready for our PI planning, which is our PI planning prep. And then finally, we have our inspect and adapt, which is really an Agile Release Train version of the iteration retrospective. Okay. Right, for a solution train, we've got something slightly different. You've got something called a pre-PI planning and you've got a post-PI planning. So the capabilities that we talked about that bind the features together, they go in as inputs into this. Then they feed into each of the different PI plannings that takes place. And then the output from the PI planning goes into the post-PI planning event where it's all brought together. And sometimes you can come up with a solution board as well that shows the dependencies across the different Agile release trains as well. You've got your solution train sync where you've got your Agile release train engineers all coming together with the solution train engineer, and they're all making sure that they're actually delivering on the overall solution. And then we've got our architect sync as well. And so this is all of your system architects coming together with your solution architects to make sure that you're actually delivering and progressing the architecture in a way that sustains and works for the overall solution. Then again, we have our solution demo. This is where we bring together all of the demos from the Agile release trains. They're integrated and we're actually showing the entire solution, right? And so that's a key event over there. Again, getting ready for PI planning, and finally our inspect and adapt at the solution level as well. So there you have it. You've got, in a nutshell, all the differences between the Agile teams, Agile release trains, solution trains, and you've got that all on one kind of page over there. I hope you guys find that useful. If you did, consider clicking a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. We're focusing a lot now on certification training and supporting many of my students that are actually training as well. So if you want to see what's available, please look in the description of the video below, and you can then sign up for any certified SAFe training either with myself or with my partners, and look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care and have a great day. Bye.